Public relations is a huge piece of marketing because if you aren't talking to the public, we can ask the question if you're just sitting in the corner talking to yourself. With that, my guest this week is Donna Loughlin. She has a PR awards list that kind of reads about like a phone book, and that comes from her ability to connect with people and her ability to help them in telling their stories. If you want to connect and if you want to learn how to tell your story better, stay tuned. Donna, thank you for coming on today. I really appreciate it. You've mentioned in stuff that businesses often focus on press releases in terms of what's there, instead of the storytelling behind they're trying to get information out instead of the storytelling. Why is that storytelling so crucial when they're doing those?
Well, storytelling is not a press release. A press release basically is a factual document or statement that oftentimes needs to be issued. If you're a publicly traded company, you have certain milestone things, financial, compliance reasons to issue things related to your quarterly finances, your annual, any partnership announcements, new product introductions, etc. Outside that, most companies I experience, particularly younger companies that aren't public, they lean in too much on the press release as being their story document. It's not a book. There's no chapters. It's literally a 1-page or maybe 2-page. That is not going to document and tell your corporate story, your product story, your trend stories, or what I call the wow factor, which is what makes you relevant. And to make yourself relevant, you need to have more than a 1-page document. You need to have different chapters.
That wholeheartedly makes sense. So my next question is going to be with that. Why does this happen? Why do they say, here's our press release. This is the generic information about our company. Use this as our story. Why does that happen?
I think it's just a bad habit, to be honest, in terms of just knowing habitually that you have something to say, you issue a press release. And I used to be a journalist, so I started on the other side, of the communication side and reporting stories. And when you're on the receiving end of story pitches, and editors receive lots of pitches and now lots of emails, right? And you don't necessarily stand out unless it is actually something extremely unique. So research, new key findings, a new historical moment, Ripley's Believe It or Not, Guinness World Book Record type thing, things that stand out. Not everybody has those moments that they can continuously record. So I created what I call a narrative story engine, which is my way of looking at the world from a news reporter's standpoint and creating stories that are based from not just the obvious, who you are, what you do, and how you do it. It's why do you do it? What is the impact that you're making? What is the wow and now factor? What are the trends that are happening that you can latch onto? And big one, so what, who cares?
It's funny you say the so what, who cares? Because I do see a lot of stuff where they talk about, here's all these wonderful features that we have. Our product has this, and our product has this, and our product has this. And they lack that explanation of, okay, well, great. Why do I care about this? Is that carelessness? Is that them just being excited about their features and not knowing that they need to grab this story?
Yeah, I think it just comes to comfortability, is that they're so excited, internally focused on their product, that they forget that the rest of the world needs to know the importance of the product. So the speeds and feeds aspect. Let's talk about car as an example. If you're shopping for a car and you're looking for a car, you're not only looking for a car with all the features, but you're looking for a car that gives you that good experience. Oftentimes, people forget that you're taking people on a journey and on an experience. Instead, they rattle off all the speeds and feeds of whatever gadget they're trying to sell. And I just came back from CES, and I like to eavesdrop in on these booth pitches, and I hear people talking about the XYZ doodly squat, and I'm like, in awe. Now, I was fortunate. I was at CES and I was with my client and Bodie Meller, basically the Michael Phelps equivalent of skiing, right? And it was interesting to talk to somebody like him who doesn't come from the tech world or from the product world, but now is because he's an inventor and an entrepreneur. And he immediately zoomed in on the experience. And I think that's really rare, probably because he's such an experience driven person, is that to be able to ski and perform the way he does and has in his career is clearly experience. I asked him, what do you think about when you're barreling down one of those alpine mountains? And because I was kind of curious, like, is it like this, oh shit, here we go again
Right.
moment? Or is it like, is it a timing thing or, is it rhythm? And he was, his answer was really profound. He said, I'm thinking about how everything's going to work together so that I'm actually enjoying it. And that's what it really comes down to. If I call 5 editors, I need to customize my discussion and with them. I can't just assume that my press release is going to do its job. And I need to make sure that my conversation is tailored to them. It's the difference between going into Ted Baker's store and buying a suit off the rack and getting it slightly tailored versus tailor-made going into an old-fashioned tailor. Same way you might go, you want a custom car or do you want a car that's just off the lot? I like to give all my clients the custom car, the custom suit, not what just came off the rack. And as a result, I get them more coverage, bigger, deeper, more relevant stories, whether they're broadcast or in print or online, but because they're actually more meaningful.
That makes a lot of sense. And it's funny when you say that because I go back to like, how many times do we all get spammed with something that is, hey, here's blankety blank, here's what we do. And like nothing is relevant to me, my business, what I'm doing. But if I would tailor that message or if they would tailor that message to, hey, Josh, I saw the podcast where you had so-and-so on, and it did really well. That's something that I'm going to pay attention to. And that's something that I'm going to acknowledge and work with then.
Well, you get those value pack coupon things in the mail.
Yes.
And you're like, I don't know, do I want to open it or not? It's kind of like that experience. So you open it and you're like, you go through and you're like, okay, maybe, no, maybe. And there might be like, it's really clever marketing because there might be 2 things in there that you might maybe do. And the rest of it is like, no, I don't need windows. No, I don't need, I don't need insulation. I don't need, this tire service. But then there's like Ace Hardware is always a yes for me because I'm probably going to go to Ace Hardware the next 90 days.
Same.
And then there's like, something else that's pet related and then it's like, yes, that's a little bit like the press release is that there's a flurry of them out there. And to be seen and to be heard, you need to make it, as I said, you can use the must-have press releases as monikers. But I just had this conversation with a client yesterday to do a press release. It's like to be or not to be. And I said, I think it's a blog post or a LinkedIn post. Not everything needs to be a press release.
Interesting. That's it. When it comes to that, I know that there's most smaller businesses, we'll say, and non-startups, non-funded businesses, things of that nature, don't go to the press. They don't do the press releases or things of that nature. Do you think that's a missed opportunity for a lot of the businesses like that?
I think your initial cotillion release when a company first comes out and says, hey, we've arrived, right? I'm sweet 16 and I'm here to stay. And oftentimes it's because they're in the process of raising funding or need some form of, of Series A pre-seed, type funding. So you do need to put that moniker out there. But after that, I think it becomes a very selective process in terms of LinkedIn, company blog, video blog. There's lots of different options. I think that the choice of the communication tools is equally as important as the style of and the persona of the company. So if you're a deep tech company and your audience is, say, defense, government, medical markets that are very vertical, you can tailor a press release to those markets and to those particular wire services in a very niche versus sending it out to the entire universe and say, hey, Elon Musk has, if you watched how he announces things, it's interesting because his companies don't issue press releases. They issue they have their annual reports and their quarterly reports and stuff, but he has a tendency to be kind of the I almost going to say anti-bully, but it's not true. Anti-establishment in terms of communications, but it works for him. But just because it works for him doesn't mean it's going to work for, Acme Company 1.0 operating out of the garage with, a cat because they can't afford the dog and they need to raise funding. What could work for them would be an exclusive, opportunity with a publication like a TechCrunch or a VentureBeat. If they don't have the money to put the press release on the wire and they have enough components to tell a really great story, sometimes taking a story and offering it as an exclusive pays off.
Is your podcast not getting the results you hoped for? Are you feeling stuck and unsure how to grow your audience or make a real impact? We get it. Podcasting can be a challenge, but with the right strategies, it can be an incredibly powerful tool. That's why we're offering our free no-pitch podcast consultation. We'll spend 30 minutes with you identifying areas for improvement on anything from optimizing your audio or video quality to developing a content strategy that resonates with your customers. If you're ready to unleash your podcast's full potential, visit the link in our show notes to schedule your free consultation. Space is limited, so sign up today so we can help you create a podcast that truly shines. That's interesting. So it really it's like, I guess I would say, we always talk PR is a part and a form of marketing. It is a chunk of it, sometimes, let's say, often neglected by a lot of smaller businesses. But it's like any other piece of marketing. If you send it out, if it is directed at everyone, absolutely no one's going to hear it. If you point it at specific targets, you will hit those specific targets then. Is that I guess would say the moral there?
Yeah, it's what you want the release to do for you or the content to do for you. So do I want to raise money? Then I need to speak to that audience. Do I want to sell product? Certainly hope so. Certainly hope I help my clients sell products. Then it has to have that tonality. Is it to attract partners or for an open beta? Or is it just to say, hey, I'm here. I need attention. I'm going to be at such and such show. Come by and see us. And so there's really knowing your audience is key. And it's like money. Like they say, money has energy. And if you can choose the right way in which you spend money and do the same process and how you actually tell your story and whether it's going to go on the wire or not, it's very much that same energy. What is the energy that you want to convey? I just had a conversation a few weeks ago with a company that came to me and said, we want you to do exactly what you did for their client XYZ. But they didn't have the budget. And so, but they had an idea in their mind what they wanted to achieve. And so I listened to their business needs. And I said, well, it's funny that you were so attracted to that flame, but that's not the flame you need. The flame that you need is actually even more hyper-focused and not as labor intensive. And it doesn't require you to invest as much either. And I think I kind of shocked them because I truthfully told them what it is they needed to hear, not what they wanted to hear, and what they needed to invest versus what they thought they needed. And so sometimes I take my clients through what I call, a whole discovery process of crafting your story and really making sure the positioning and the messaging is on point. And then to the audience that you're going to be speaking to, then decide what tools we use versus say, I want to be in the cover of Forbes. I want to be in the cover of Fast Company. I want to be this, 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 this. And that's a great goal to have. But it's the same way. If I'm going to go skiing for the first time, I'm going to say, I'm going to be Bodie Miller. And I'm like, yeah, dream's going to be short lived. So it's just one of my principal, business monikers is to help my clients be successful using the right tools at the right time. And PR to me is what is part of the strategic business development. It's part of the strategic sales component. It's part of marketing. And it's also very much part of the C-suite conversation, because if a company's gearing up for an IPO, I need to know that. If a company's gearing up to host 50 partners coming from around the world to talk about their latest robot phenomena, I kind of need to know that too. So there's a lot of things that, thank goodness I'm, full of curiosity because I ask a lot of questions, but I think that public relations is not just about blanketing everybody, right? It's like,
Sure.
you hear the terms spray and pray. People will just kind of toss it out there like sprinkles, and that's a very short-lived process. One of the things I think also is there's a trend that people are thinking that artificial intelligence will replace the need for a lot of the traditional components. And I have very strong opinions about that, because I think that AI is an enabler. It's a tool. It's a companion. It's like looking up in the thesaurus or Google or Wikipedia. Sometimes you get stuck. I'm writing a book. I get stuck. I can't think of the words, and I'll go to ChatGPT or OpenAI, and I use it that way. But I don't use it to replace my cognitive thinking or writing any content or narrative.
It's funny, and I've got some good, interesting questions about AI here in a bit, because it seems like, I don't know about you, but it seems like it might be a topic as of the past year or two. I mean, people have garnered interest in it. Maybe just a hint of that. With that, it's interesting. The thing that I've heard you say a lot of is that it all comes back to, and one of the things that we always preach is kind of that preparation. Do you think too many people are going out and doing the marketing and doing the press releases and all those things before they really have their story nailed down, before they really have this direction of that nailed down? Is that something you see a lot? And once again, what's something that someone can do just to correct that, to make sure that's not that? I mean, here we have a cart. Where's a horse?
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things I think a lot of founders and entrepreneurs quickly lose sight of, because they're so busy trying to raise funding, and they're trying to build a product, or they're trying to, build a team, is they forget the original reason, the origin story of why. So it's like, I always say, why did you create this company? And I did a whole podcast on this. It's like behind the scenes, the moment that you actually decided to make that decision. So why are you, why did you decide, to create the highest, fastest, whatever, motorcycle, car, robot that can scale skyscrapers. And so like, what was that moment? Because if you go back to that moment, typically that is literally the origin and the experience that you want your customer to feel. And that's that wow and now factor. And so I think a lot of the companies get really busy. And I think what's interesting, if you look at somebody, like NVIDIA, who's been around for a long time, I think one of the reasons why the CEO, who's actually in the same position as he has been since the inception, he's probably more relevant now than he was 20 years ago. But I don't think he's lost touch with the wow and now, and the ability to actually distinctively talk about innovation and technology based on what's happening now, not what was happening 20 years ago.
That's interesting. And that makes a lot of sense too, in terms of that here's why we started this. Here's why we do this. It's funny because even as you were talking about that, I think back to the two things. Is one, why do I do this? It refreshes that in my mind. And it's the same thing when we work with people on video. We get calls all the time. We want to do video. And I'm like, great. Why? And they're like, well, video. And I'm like, why? What are we trying to do here?
Yeah. Well, it goes back to like, do you listen or do you respond? And people often were trained to operate waist high, looking at our phones. We seldom look up. And we're always looking down. And it's like, well, if you look at the world slightly different and you look up and you see different things, right? You might see a satellite, you might see, cherry blossoms, you might see birds, but it's just like, look at things differently. Right. And so I think that's one of the things I've learned working in with a lot of automotive companies. And you were talking about the experience, but it's not a one size fits all car. And it's not a one size fits all experience. So as a marketeer, it's important for us to make sure we're speaking to the right audience. I'm going to call, for example, Popular Science for a really deep technical story. And I'm going to call Motor Trends for a really, fun, this road tripping, type of story. And I'm going to call the Wall Street Journal or CNN or Bloomberg for more of a business story. And so they're very different textures, but they make a quilt.
Oh, I like that. Different textures, but they make a quilt. I think that's my new favorite saying today.
Dolly Parton, a coat of many colors. I mean, come on.
I love it. So since we mentioned AI, I'm going to go to that because it appears that it's a thing now. It's this crazy little thing that a couple of people have heard about it. There's good, and then there's not so good with some of the AI stuff. One of the examples that I always like to give with it is, it is a tool, and it is like any other tool. Pliers can be a hammer. They're not a very good hammer, but pliers can still be used as a hammer. We've all done it. If you've worked on anything, you've got a pair of pliers, you need to pound on something. The hammer's all the way over there. I'm using the pliers. How do you feel that businesses can start to really use the AI tools that are out there? Effectively, safely, and still, tell their story with them without losing the story, so to say, to the robots, I guess I would say.
So I like to call AI always intelligent, meaning not just artificial intelligence, that we need to be always intelligent about the tools that we use. And AI to me it's been in our environment for a while. So you think about cruise control, that's AI. You think about Nest thermostats, that's AI. Those are very basic things that we adopted and embraced. But I think with any innovation in technology, like you talking about the pliers, in the right hands, it could be powerful and really, really, applied successfully. In the hands of the wrong person and the wrong application, innovation and technology can be ghastly disastrous. So the things that I like about AI are the fact that I can actually have access to things smarter than me in my home, in my car, in my pocket. Artificial intelligence like Chat GPT type services, I think are great for the same way video games were kind of entertaining. I find they're a little bit of whimsy and a little bit of fun. I give everyone the challenge to go to Chat GPT or OpenAI and ask them to, give them a bit of information about you and have them write your bio or your obituary or whatever it is that you want, eulogy, and see what it comes up with. It's a little funny, I think. That's just, kind of a way my mind works. I recently did something like that for a friend. It was a birthday celebration, and I actually wanted to do something fun for her. So I I wrote up something and then I put it in Chat GPT and it came back with some nuances that I thought, oh, I didn't think about that, and just gave me some new fuel. But how companies can use that is in their communications department, not to replace what they're doing, but to stimulate their mind and get them to be more creative. Right. And I think using artificial intelligence videos, when it's appropriate. I think we always have to think is it appropriate? When do you actually hire a real photographer versus doing AI generated content? You don't necessarily own that. There's going to be all kinds of licensing issues that are going to be coming at us. A few years ago, everything was blockchain, crypto. And now we're in the AI generation. And look what's happened with blockchain and crypto. So there's a lot of bad people out there using them, and there's a lot of good business reasons to use blockchain. You don't need crypto to use blockchain, no, it's wrong. You don't, yeah, you need blockchain, but crypto needs blockchain, but blockchain doesn't need crypto. Right. And so there's a lot of things that you can use successfully with blockchain for pharmaceutical product development, following things forensically, and police and art and artists and musicians. And I think the same thing's happening with AI. We're going to find out that in the music industry, creative arts industry, that people are going to be challenged on making hard choices of when to use AI. Now, the AI in the wrong hands can mean people, identity theft and content theft, corporate IP. I'm working with this brilliant company out of Berlin that is actually doing things local, resident AI, making sure a corporate IP and content is safe and private versus having it in the cloud. And so if it's in the cloud, everybody has access to it. But if you're a government, medical, entertainment industry, a retailer, you don't want all your laundry hanging out there in the cloud. So
Definitely not.
So I think one of our responsibilities, and I talk about this often to my friends so they can prepare their kids, and these are under 18. We had to teach our kids internet safety. Whether they follow the rules or not, we taught them. We have to teach kids the responsibility and make smart choices in artificial intelligence too. Because in the wrong hands, they're bad guys, when I say bad guys, I mean just general humanity, creepers on social media and stuff will use AI. And so we have to be aware it's not at all you can eat either. We have to actually be able to make smart choices of when AI is appropriate and when it's not appropriate.
That makes sense. It's funny because when you started talking about it, the pliers for me very quickly turned into a chainsaw that in the right hands, used correctly, done well, that thing is going to do some amazing things. If you put that in the hands of an amateur that has no idea what they're doing, and maybe they're going to try and cut a wall or a car with it, that is going to end poorly for pretty much everyone involved.
Exactly.
So it's interesting how the pliers evolved into a chainsaw. I think that's my new analogy.
I like that. I actually have to go check how many sets of pliers I have now.
When businesses, for any business that's looking to improve their storytelling and to kind of go back to that, to telling their story and why do they do this? What's something that they can go to today and say, look, we really need to get back to our story? What's a base that they can start at? What's something actionable that they can take and say, look, we need to re-examine our story?
Call me.
I love it. You
can dump your shoebox on me and I'll just listen. But I think the first thing is to not be afraid. Not to be afraid to unearth and discover and maybe rediscover some of the key components of your successes, your triumphs, your things that work that haven't worked, and basically calibrate it. And so oftentimes what I'll do is I will start with Post-it notes. I have big 3M Post-it things and put them on the wall. And it literally will, start with, with the attributes of a company. Like it's like, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And oftentimes companies will just start with their product again. And I'm like, I got to pull them back out because you have to look for the unobvious and versus the obvious. I go to your website and it tells me editors in general will go to company website. They'll go to Wikipedia and they'll Google you. Even if you have a fully dedicated press section on your website, they often don't go there. But I would tell you, they also go to LinkedIn. And so LinkedIn can be a very powerful new platform for businesses. But you constantly have to pull, I'm going to give another analogy back to that quilt we were talking about, is the thread. You have to pull the thread. So think the quilt has a loose thread and you start pulling on the thread and you got to make sure you pull it all the way through to get to the other side. Storytelling is a lot like that. Sometimes you have the same thread and sometimes you have several threads. And so what thread do you pull now? Is it I need partner thread, I need funding thread, I need to sell product thread, I need to rival my competition thread? And that's where the discovery process becomes really important. Is like, what do you want it to do for you? How can I help you bring your story to market to help you meet your business end goal? Versus, we're going to issue a press release. It's going to be great. We're going to send this picture up, over the satellites around the world, and everybody's going to write about it. I don't have any successful press release that didn't require me to be in front of it for a minimum of 2 to 3 weeks. I say minimum because I have actually launched companies in 10 days, which I don't recommend. And being able to, I launched Damon Motorcycles in 10 days and CES 2020. They
That's
called me during the holiday season and said, we hear you're really great at what you do. What are you doing? I'm like, it's holiday season. I'm in. And I was immediately like, excuse me, family. But it really, it does require some discipline, right? In terms of getting out of your comfort zone.
Sure.
But once you go through the process and going through all those Post-its and you see the powerful opportunities that you have, and you go, oh, it's more than a pair of pliers.
Right.
It's actually pliers that actually allow me to do something amazing. What's that amazing thing? What's that impact that I can make?
And then you adjust that for wherever you need to apply it once you have that base.
That's it.
So
is it a sustainability story? Is it a conscious-driven company story? Is it, I actually have numerical data, empirical numerical data that I can say, 300, times faster, cleaner, better? Or is it just, it's a really lovely tractor? I launched an electric tractor company some years back.
I saw that one.
Yeah, and it was actually really endearing for me because I got my master's thesis in the democratization of the farm workers union, only because I didn't know what to write on. And my professor finally said, when you're not writing and you're not at school, what do you do? And I said, well, I like to go through farm country, go down to Salinas Valley, and I like to go down there, and I like to go buy fruit, and like, what's the story? And I said, well, it's more than a story. I have empathy for the farm workers. And why do I have empathy for the farm workers? Well, because there's children that actually are still working in the fields with their parents. Sure. And why do I have empathy about that? Well, because I like reading books, and kids that are, 8 to 12 years of age and working in the fields aren't necessarily reading books, right? And so that became my narrative and the story that I went to go search. It wasn't an obvious story. It wasn't a story that everyone was talking about. But for me, that's the genesis of what makes a good story. We all have our own life journey. And I just came up with this a couple of weeks ago and talking to a 16-year-old. And I was like, okay, how do I actually explain the book of life? Which is, it's a big book. So we all have our own journey. We all choose to do certain things along the way. We all learn, and I've certainly tried to teach my children, give them the tools to thrive so they can be successful, and they're going to make mistakes. But the journey has chapters, and there's a reason why when people retire versus people that say next chapter. I want to be the next chapter and turning chapters, because retire means I'm probably not going to do anything. I'm just going to go, organize my toolkit and my pliers and stuff. Versus next chapter is I'm going to build something and I'm going to need these pliers to do it with. And I think that's a little bit, like storytelling, is that you can just do the obvious and say, well, I'm expected to do this. Or you could do the unobvious, which is nobody expected this story, and now watch me.
I love that. To me, that is, it's pulling out that piece and really spending the time to go deep enough on it to say, okay, look, what is the special piece to that? I absolutely love it. To me, I always like to end on a high note, and boy, I think that one is a great one to end on. That being said, where can people find you?
Everywhere. No. And the best place to find me is LinkedIn, Donna Loughlin. That's Loughlin. My business website is LMGPR, which stands for Leadership, Momentum, and Growth, because that's what I like to help companies do. And obviously here on this podcast.
Love it. Donna, I really appreciate the time today. I thank you very much. And we're going to have to do this again soon.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We got to get more tools out of the toolbox.
Exactly. Thanks, Donna. I picked up a couple of really big lessons today. Before I get into those, one thing I want to cover, do me a favor. Leave us a review. That would help us immensely. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you follow. If you've got a question, by all means, I would love to hear it in the comments. We want to talk about the things you want to hear about. So put that in the comments. Would love to hear about it. The thing that I get from this is that so many of us, we forget our story and we forget the why we're doing this. We want to go straight to the features, advantages, and benefits. Just no, tell me why. What is going to be the end result of this? We want to talk about the pretty funny things. I go back to some of the things that I used to talk about with the semi trucks. I would talk about how the mirrors are really solid mounted. That's a feature, and it's a good feature that those trucks had. But why does it matter? It mattered because you weren't going to be replacing the mirrors if someone touched something with them. It mattered because it showed that the truck had a high build quality. It mattered, meaning it's going to keep your truck out of the shop, out on the roads, making you money. I didn't usually cover that. I would typically just talk about how strong the mirror was. So, yeah. A lot of the stuff Donna talked about today, I'm guilty of. And it's one of those things that I'm going to make sure that I work with moving forward to make sure that I'm telling people, hey, this is what this means to you. This is going to be the end result to you. It's a big thing. And it's another conversation I am really, really glad that I have. Love to have a conversation with you. So like I said, put something in the comments. Reach out by all means. Would love to hear from you. As always, take care of yourself. You can take care of someone else too. I will see you soon. Creating engaging content can feel overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. That's why I'm excited to share our Stomping Podcasting newsletter. You'll get actionable insights and expert tips straight to your inbox. These are to help you maximize your video marketing and podcasting return on investment. Head over to the show notes and click the link to subscribe to our free newsletter. Don't miss out on this opportunity to become a video marketing and podcasting pro.